This conference will now be recorded.
We should be all set.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Haven't noted it's probably 7:01 now. And a roll call. We have Mr. Delary.
Here.
Mr. Pecor.
Present.
Mr. Hill.
Here.
And that's all we got today. And I'm here. And Mitch is here. I'm Bill Smith, the chair. First, order of approval of the minutes from December 5th. You all had a chance to review those?
You left my name off the roll call last.
Did I leave your name off?
Yeah.
I'll fix that.
I ain't gonna worry about it.
We'll make sure you're on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that slight amendment or adjustment, is there any other changes or clarifications?
I don't see any.
No.
Okay. Well, anyone want
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second it.
to move to Hill as seconded? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed. Okay. Just jump right in. Old business, but it's kind of new business because we haven't seen it yet. But so you guys are Wesco Realty and apply for conditional use site plan reviews to add a 8x40 walk-in cooler on the south side of Champlain Farms, 73 North Main. And we've now received the A&R review has come back, which you folks had a chance to see that as well. Mr. Simmons, have you seen the
Not.
December 5?
I thought I emailed you that last week,
did?
but maybe you didn't.
So that's site plan.
Short answer is that it looks like DEC has some concerns about it going closer to the top of bank in the flood hazard area. Which from there,
Yes, you met with.
I guess we'll sort of receive this as a document we can review and use as.
Yep, this was presented before our December meeting.
Yep. And budget, we'll just have that in the record of the application.
This was before the meeting.
December 5 is the date of, I think December 5th was the date of our last meeting.
Yep, December 5th was when we attempted to have our December meeting, but you were in Florida, so we tabled.
Yes.
The
Okay.
table things, but they supplied this for that meeting.
Oh, our site visit was on November 12th. Okay,
Yep.
correct.
Okay.
And just a very minor note I will make.
Yep.
On page 2 of this letter, Ned, at the top of the letter, referred to section 5.07 of our zoning regulations. That's actually the old records. It's actually section 7.7 C1.
Yeah, I wanted to say that.
Yep.
If you were looking for that in your regs, you won't find them.
Yeah.
But these were, our regs were unchanged when they revised them last year though.
Yep.
They
Yes.
just changed the way it's organized. The paragraphs are not Roman numeral 5.07, but rather they're section 7. Which flood hazard area regulations, which starts on page 89 of your 2004 bylaws. Should you care to have some light reading some evening, I suggest you do that. And actually notes that these regulations are unchanged per recommendation of the CB, Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, awaiting new floodplain and river corridor mapping in early 2024. So, I guess, why don't you tell us what you want to do here? I don't want to assume anything. It's straightforward to me, but.
Well, just reading this, so under a performance standard, it would probably be acceptable. So that, because Ned did tell us at the meeting, he was going to talk with his boss, Stacy. And apparently his boss, Stacy, says it looks like it's acceptable.
Where
Read that.
Where is that?
Well, I'm
This
reading
paragraph
this
in the middle right here,
Uh,
after the meeting,
Read that.
I reached out to Stacy.
at the end here.
which would allow the new development within river corridors where the development does not increase the risk of the investment to itself and further diminish the ability of the river to manage erosion, energy, and reduce flood damage.
It sort of looks like that's an approval letter. I mean,
Yep, but the unfortunate thing is, yes, I think Stacy Pomeroy said that because of how that area has been developed, she did not view that additional development toward the river would impact the area at all. But Ned did point out in the last paragraph of the letter that these comments are provided to the town as requested through blah, blah, blah. Additional local, state, federal permits may be required. Where the community has additional or more stringent standards, those standards apply. And that's the unfortunate item, is that what he referred to as above, that we've got a floodplain regulation about the fluvial erosion hazard zone that says that any development should not decrease the distance between the existing principal structure and the top of the bank. And what you're proposing is to build toward the bank. Our regulations don't allow that right now. And what Ned advised is that we could relax those regulations. We haven't yet. These are the standards that we have. So the DRB may feel inclined to go with a letter of this, and that's not up to me.
Right, well, again, what I'm trying to figure out, and of course, you know, we can't change our zoning regs, we have to enforce our zoning regs, but, right, so where is the wiggle room here, is where it's, if you.
Yeah, there may be.
7.7C of our regs, page 97, it says fluvial erosion hazard zone. Improvements to existing structures shall not decrease the distance between the existing principal structure and the top of the bank. Now,
Is the fluvial erosion hazard zone part of this 500-year flood hazard, or is it part of the special flood hazard area? So as you can see on the photo,
right,
we don't overlap with our addition with the
Right.
special flood hazard area in floodway, just this 500-year.
right.
So I'm not sure which of those two is
I was
in
reading,
correspondence to.
I was reading the
fluvial.
December 5th letter and the drawing in that to show that the yellow area was this fluvial erosion hazard zone, which the entire building's in.
Right.
And half of Kenyon's beside it.
It actually said it's coded, but on this
Yeah.
chart at the first page, it does say yellow is the
FEH.
FEH was the fluvial erosion hazard zone. It's
I got it now, yeah.
not the most obvious thing in the world.
So if your cooler were on the west side of the building, I don't know if setbacks affected or not, but that would, and not closer to the top of bank than the existing building, then that could be a way to do it without violating 7.7C1. But what do you folks want to do?
Okay,
I mean,
well,
it's pretty straightforward. You got a want to do an 8x40
Right.
cooler, south end of the building.
right, we have 8 reach-in coolers, which is highly inefficient inside that store.
Currently
And
on this wall.
Oh, yeah,
This,
I'm a
this is
customer.
land that, and again, we bought the property, I think in 1971 or 72. Been at this a long time, been through all the floods. I've personally been down there, and every time there was a flood, I've been down here and been witnesses themselves to make sure our properties are okay. And we were not affected by Irene. That never got higher than the riverbank. I was right there on the side of the riverbank when Irene was here. And that was probably the worst of all of them. So I had asked Ned, I said, where in the world did this map come from? You got my whole site flooded. Where in the elevation of this river is 780. You know, Burlington is down at 100, and we're not really sitting at the bottom of Sugarbush or Camel's Hump here. I mean, we're at almost 800 feet here. So, you know, I'm shocked that you could flood this much. And he said, well, you know, this map's a statistical analysis, some historical data, blah, blah, you know. And I'm like, well, I said, what's the reality here, you know? I mean, we're at a very high elevation, and unfortunately, you know, if I have to challenge you, I got to get another expert like you to challenge your map, because I don't really believe your map that you're presenting to me at this time, because I've been through, you know, over 50 years of history here. And the river's never been over the bank, but we can talk about 500-year floods and stuff like that. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to add a small addition so that we can become efficient, add a little more space to the store. It sort of started when everybody had come to me about the bridge going out and they wanted easements. And it's like, wow, if you're going to put easements in here, then I guess I better make my move and get my addition on, because the next thing you know, I won't be able to do an addition because I'll be encroaching on some easement I gave up. I really don't have a problem with easement, but what a nice trade-off, Yeah, I'll do the easement, you give me the addition. So it's kind of how it started with Mitch and I. And in the meantime, I had a couple other projects in Barry and had heard about Ned and was doing these flood hazard permits. And I sort of understand they want to make sure outlets are above floodplains, and that makes sense to me. But this isn't living residence area. This isn't nobody living here. It's a walk-in cooler with soda and beer in it. So there's nothing like that's going to get damaged more than a small monetary amount. And in terms of the land, it's just sort of wasted land. It's just always been there. We use it for dumpsters and parking. And he said, yeah, put it on the other side of the building. And I'm like, well, come on. I mean, this is not a very big lot, right? My lot's not very big here. And I said, that's where the fuel tanks are. That's where the parking is. That just doesn't make sense. That's not where I want to go. I'd have to rebuild the whole entire store in order to do that. And so, I'm not even sure we have to go out 8 feet. We might be able to go 6 feet. And that's kind of what we kind of think, that we really are not going to have any impact whatsoever in this area with the small amount of footprint we have. We don't understand how we could possibly be holding up the river, whatever that argument he was making, that, we don't want to be, impacting this river and holding it back. And I just can't imagine that we would, at this elevation, do that. That was like my original site plan when we went from a garage to a store, putting on the addition on the back for a walk-in cooler and storage. That was the best.
I just want to
site
make
plan
sure I heard correctly. Did you say that your fuel tanks are on this side of the building?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're
It's
near
under
the
this
building, I assume?
concrete
Yes.
slab right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
The north side.
Okay.
And this is a store we're doing in South Burlington, but it's identical to what we're proposing here, because it also is getting an addition. That's our new look. This is what we had proposed to you, which was this was the drawing that we originally proposed to Northfield with the addition on it, the walk-in cooler. It will virtually drop the electric bill in half, because all those reach-in coolers are very expensive to operate, and it's dollar for dollar. So every dollar of cooling you pay for, which generates the heat, will also be a dollar of air conditioning we have to spend to cool the building off. So where we've done this, the electric bill drops $1,000 a month. It's huge. So it's just the way to go energy-wise.
So we're not making money off the electrical, so that shouldn't be considered.
Yes, you don't have your own electric power.
Yes, we do.
You do have your own electric.
Pardon?
You have your own electric grid? Yeah.
That was
He was being funny.
strictly human.
Yes, it was not.
Well, it'll give you more power to sell at higher rates.
There you go.
I'm just going to mention real quickly too, I'm going to add these two documents to Dave's application.
Yeah, can we make sure?
And I'll reflect that in a minute, that these were added as
And the
submissions.
two documents you're specifically stating are what?
It's an elevation.
You got the front elevation A 1.0 Champlain Farms.
Yep.
And what's the other one?
The other one is the old site plan.
Big
This
sucker.
was the original site plan when we converted a repair garage to a store in the 80s.
Right.
I remember when that was a service station.
Butch. Remember Butch?
Yeah,
Remember whatever happened to him?
he's still alive.
He's still alive. Wow.
I see him every Wednesday at cribbage.
Wow.
That's weird.
We'll say hi to him.
Well,
He's 79 years old.
he was
79.
he was actually married to my cousin.
Hmm?
He was married to my cousin.
Yep.
Wow.
I see him and Gail every Wednesday.
So.
And he still works 3 days a week.
I'll say that kind of as a resident of Northfield for 20 years, I certainly remember Irene. My old office actually was diving across the bridge from you, the little building on the southeast corner there. And Ed Miller and I had an office there. And we didn't get flooded. It came damn close, but we did not get flooded, and that's lower than you guys, lower than your side. So they said that was the 500-year flood, right? That's why Water Street got all bought up, because that all got flooded out.
The only issue with that now is all
So-
the media that filled in the river.
So I do share your questioning of this 500-year flood zone. Gray here is like, it's just not what I've seen, and what they said was a 500-year flood didn't get there.
Right.
So I know you can have a 500-year flood 3 days in a row if you want, but
Well, remember, it rained like 11 inches of rain in the 24-hour period. That's kind of the benchmark I looked at, because, we've had plenty where it's rained 5 inches in 24 hours, or 6 inches, and we haven't been flooded like in Barry, which is much lower. But at 10 inches, we're in trouble. 10 inches is when we got flooded in Barry. And the 11 with Irene, we got flooded in Barry. I mean, we're only talking, well, it was still nominal in the store because the store was elevated, but it was not significant damage in our convenience stores at all.
so
But I just can't believe that, the bottom line is that the land is gonna be deemed worthless. When you look at this map here, that why am I paying tax on this land if we can't use it or develop or do anything with it? And I'm the type of person that says, hey, if you let me expand, I'm more than happy to pay more taxes and give that money all right back to the town. Because we're all gonna win in the end. I'm gonna have a more convenient store, a better store to do business into the future. And
it's getting a little worn around the edges over there.
It's an old
Very.
building.
And this is like your overall plan is it you redoing it, or you
yeah, that's our new look.
You're not
So,
just slapping a cooler on the end of the building.
no, because how are you gonna finish it off? I mean, I gotta redo all the siding, gotta redo the roof. Ed, in the day when I put that white roof on, I was really thinking energy efficiency again too. Hey, let's have a white roof. A carpenter who has passed away in 2022 told me that 1 week in March where it was 60 degrees out. Remember, there was a week he was working on a store in Bristol. And he said, I'm gonna save you. I'm gonna make you a fortune. He painted the roof white, and he dropped the heat bill from like 140, down to 80. That roof had gotten so hot during that 1 week just by going white. And that was the same time frame when I said, well, let's start putting white roofs on, because clearly that's gonna cut my air conditioning bill, which is our largest electric expense. And after I looked at it, I said, boy, I wish I hadn't done that, because it really doesn't look too attractive. So we're getting back to our dark roofs, image-wise. But I've always regretted that sort of whitish roof that I put on down here. It just doesn't meet the contrast, and our new colors, I think, are attractive. And
So I'm gonna ask some dumb.
Yeah,
I'm gonna ask
let's
some-
ask
yeah, I'm
the
gonna
questions. Have the board ask the questions here.
ask some dumb questions here. So who determines the FEH? Is that the state?
Yes, Agency of Natural Resources.
And then we write we write our zoning regs based on
Yep.
the
Well,
information.
yeah, I think just a real little bit of quick background on this. The Planning Commission in Northfield recently updated the zoning regulations, and during that process, they were actually advised by the ANR to not update the floodplain section of the regulations, because the state is in the process of remapping all the floodways in the state, or the watersheds. And they were actually originally planning to finish remapping the central Vermont watershed during 2023. Then we got a flood in 2023, we got another flood in 2024, and now they're telling us that they probably won't have that remapping done until 2026 probably. And at some point, what they will do is the ANR typically issues a model regulation, and then they will recommend that Northfield should just adopt that model regulation as an amendment to our zoning regulations. And when Ned and I did this talk when we did a site visit with Dave over at the shop, that's when Ned started looking through our regulations, and he actually noted that we've got regulations that are more strict than what the state would typically do, and said, yeah, you could maybe update your regulations and soften that language, but right now the language that we have is the language that we have. And Planning Commission will probably want to revisit that, but
I think they should, because we may well see a change to that map.
That's,
However, the last thing, I remember this from working for developers and saying, you don't want a flash in yellow, you want either a hard red or a green go.
right.
Flash in yellow drives you crazy and costs you money. But in looking at our current regs, 7.6F is variances. It says we may agree, so maybe this comes within that category, which is a lift but not possible. And I just want to read it to folks here, because you probably aren't looking at these unless you want to. Page 93 of your regs, if you're interested. Variances may be granted in writing by the DRB, only in accordance with 24 VSA, criteria for variance, which we got to find in our regs, right? and after public notice, but the variance may be allowed if, based on a review by ANR, it is determined that the proposed development will not obstruct the establishment and maintenance of fluvial geomorphic equilibrium for the watercourse. That sounds a lot like what they stay here on the bottom of page 2,
right?
Which is that they're not saying that, they're not delineating where the fluvial erosion hazard zone is. They're just saying that it's not going to. The proposed expansion probably would not require riprap and other channel management practices any sooner than currently exists. In other words, they're not changing the course of the river or risking having to change the course of the river by doing it. So I read that. So, and then it also says, F2 says any variance issued will not increase flood heights and will inform the applicant writing over the signature of a community official, I guess that's meant, that the issuance of a variance to construct a structure below the base flood elevation increases risk to life and property and will result in increased flood insurance premiums up to amounts as high as
David,
$25 per hour.
Want to read that?
It's quite specific.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so, it's possible to get a variance from this, just because we've never updated this language about it. How do we? It's either a no or it's a variance. And I guess what I'd like to know from the board is, am I suggesting this and you're all going, what the hell's it talking about? No, or let's go that way, or I'd like to kind of poll the board here.
Yep. So where I'm at is it sounds like what I'm hearing is, if we're going by the reg, it's a no. If we're going by the variance, it's a possibility. And that being said, it is, as we've all experienced, Irene, it did not crest, it did not flood. That also being said, is if they go in and remap based on the data that's provided, this map could change and this yellow area could be reduced, and then we would have said no, and we'd be right back here in a couple of years saying yes.
And
Potentially.
And we'd have the same looking building with the same problems for access by customers and cost to heat and cool.
Right. So if I hear the variance language correctly, I would be in favor of exploring that variance.
Kind of going down through the criteria for that.
And making sure it checks the boxes, make sure we're not doing anything out of
Against our
sorts.
regulations.
Okay, so,
That's my concern.
okay. I was waiting to go.
Well, no, and again, I would like to see any increase in business structures around town. And increase the business itself of these businesses. Right. But again, I don't want to see a violation of our own regulations or have it questioned by anybody once it's done. If we don't have a solid green light to go,
right,
then I would be inclined to say no.
Okay.
You gotta believe that if we put a new addition on with a walk-in cooler, these are ceiling to
Oh, yeah.
doors with lots of options. We're very limited in what we can sell. When it comes to reaching coolers that Coke and Pepsi provide, it's all their stuff, most of which it doesn't sell. So they have there's a lot more control corporately of our store than what we would like to do. And so, yeah, for the community, it's certainly much better, but those are all economic arguments that aren't part of the regulations here.
Correct.
But certainly if we can get a variance, this is almost like a go forward letter from what I can see, because, you know, it's much more difficult when we have to fight the state on stuff like this.
What do you think, Elroy?
So the way I read it is we have the authority to do the variance if we want to.
Mhm.
Um,
And we can look at those criteria.
Yeah.
I'm trying to dig it around. For those.
as I've read it, paid attention to it. I've lived in this town for 49 years, and I've never seen a major flood in the downtown. And I don't expect to ever see one. So my opinion is that it's not going to hurt the community. It's just going to make the community look better with the store upgraded and the property upgraded, and so I have no problem with it. You know,
Well, I guess I'd like to treat it like a variance. I'm on here, and then let's go through the criteria of variances
Yep.
and see.
Yep.
Let's see if we can. We need to articulate how we get to a variance for the record. Okay. So
I'm just gonna add something real quick. I don't think that necessarily would change any opinion about this project, but the town is also on this map sort of, you folks might be familiar with the Cross Brothers Dam, which is across the main street.
Yep.
The town is in the process, I'm not sure where it is, but the town is in the process of removing that dam, which
which is going to make the flood less
which
flood problem.
would make more river area, I think.
Less likely to have a flood.
Pardon?
Then it's even less likely.
Yeah, but,
And I do believe within the next year and a half that
yeah, it's
That
in
dam is gonna-
it's
gonna
on
be
the
gone.
calendar at some point, but, coming up in the next year or so.
I think when they are doing the bridge, I think that they're going to be doing the
The dam as
dam
well.
at the same time.
It's gonna be a rough summer for us. If they take the bridge out, we are gonna be
Oh,
decimated there.
yeah.
No, I don't think it's gonna,
Well, you'll be on the end of a dead end road.
Right.
but
It'll
you'll
be the
also be,
last stop before people take a right, so.
but you'll also be the closest convenience store to downtown still, no matter what.
Well,
They still have to go around, and either, when they get back around over to Main Street, either gonna have to go left or go right. And I'd be more inclined to wanna go right, something that's closer, instead of going all the way down to convenience or whatever.
oh, maybe.
That's my, but anyways.
Usually the fuel takes a big hit because the road's closed.
of course.
People just avoid.
No, and there is development coming into town too, that
Just gonna
down
be-
there, right across the street basically from you,
Right.
You're going to,
and then up on
It just telling me.
Main Street, right. And that would be a big boost to you guys, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah. you'll be a minimum 40% loss for the time.
Yeah, that's easy to absorb, 40%.
And it's the summer months. It's the best months of the year.
Once you
Buddy.
make money anyway.
It's okay. That's when we'll do our work.
Well,
But the state,
I guess I would say the five criteria for variance, and I guess we'll go through them and say, does this qualify under this criteria, yes or no? Right. The first one is, there are unique physical circumstances or conditions, including irregularity, narrowness, or shallowness of lot size or shape, or exceptional topographical or other physical conditions peculiar to the particular property, and the unnecessary hardship is due to these conditions. In other words, the bank's too close. And not the circumstances or conditions generally created by the provisions of the regulation in the neighborhood or district. Yeah, okay, so it's a unique condition here, right? You're close to a very high bank to the river that has never flooded in the living memory around this table, right?
Never flooded, never eroded.
Yes, there are unique physical conditions. Second one is, because of those conditions, there's no possibility that can be developed in strict conformity with the provisions of our regs. In other words, they can't put them on the north side because the tanks are there and the concrete's there. Can't put them on the west side because there's not enough room next to the canyon zone. All right. And obviously can't come closer to the road because that's where people come in and get their gas. Okay, so there's no possibility of putting it anywhere else here. It's two. Third one is the unnecessary hardship has not been created by the appellant. Well, bought the building 50 years ago, pretty much where it sits. But, okay, so I think we're at 3. 4, the variance, if authorized, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district, or impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property, reduce access to renewable energy resources, or be detrimental to the public welfare. There's a lot of things in there, but I don't think it does any of those things. All right. Fifth one is the variance if authorized will represent the minimum variance that will afford relief and will represent the least deviation possible from the regulations or from the plan. So you're going either no more than 8 feet towards the river. Obviously, you've got to work around this to build the thing, but that's not part of what we're doing. We're just talking about the structure. So
I think it checks the boxes.
I think we do check the 5 criteria for variance under the regs in our zoning regs. Page 32, if you care. And having been said, I guess I would entertain a motion to approve a variance for the project as presented by the Simmondingers.
So correct me if I'm wrong, there is one, we will have to go back out in public notice for this variance?
No.
No, it's essentially,
It's not somewhere in there, it said something about having to.
Oh.
I could be wrong, I thought we had to basically.
go ahead.
Well,
No, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think that a variance is a remedy that the DRB can apply if they can't meet the strict
Okay,
Right.
just want to make sure that we're. not-
requirements.
Right,
that-
no, there's not we don't have to go out and notice anything again.
No,
Because
because-
the variance is the equivalent of, it's permanent, saying that you don't technically comply with the letter of the regs, but it's not your
Under a
fault.
unique situation.
Right, it's a very unique situation that you didn't cause.
And you're not affecting the neighbors,
Right, in fact, it's gonna be
Only in a
better.
positive way.
or the
Right.
fish, but
Fish.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Fabulous.
Congratulations.
Here you go, gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much.
And,
it'll make it better down
You
there.
discussed that the state was talking about not changing the course of the river.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't know how they could.
I know, that's, to me,
I'm
I'm
gonna
thinking
change the
about
course
that
of the
saying,
river, yeah.
as somebody, right, who has properties in Montpelier and Barry that have been affected by the floods in the last 2 years, everybody's been thinking about this.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't widen the river, but how else can you change the level of the river?
That's it.
You dam it and you trench it. Is
All you
there
can do.
a way to do that? Is that being discussed rather than saying, hey, let's just go map everybody and deem their land as flood hazard zones and they can't use it?
Well,
Or a solution
Without-
of trenching the river itself and
This-
making it deeper.
it'll be very trying to do that.
Yeah, but under
those.
But under their environmental regulations, they can't.
Right.
Well,
Well, yeah, I
Dog River
think
used to be
That's
one
the
of the.
pushback we need.
Dog River used to be one
And
of
every
the
town
trout
fight
streams
that.
That needs to
in the
change.
state.
Yep.
And it's all gravelled in and silted in.
Right.
I grew up in this town.
Right.
I was born and raised in this town. I'm 64. And I used to fish the Dog River every day in the summer as a teenager. And we used to swim in the rivers up there. And there used to be a place up the river just past Male Nursing Home that was called a 14-footer. That is no longer a 14-footer. It's not even a 4-footer anymore.
It's a 3-foot.
It's all flood, it's all filled in.
Ankle deep.
I can walk
That's off
across
Kingston's
it,
Bridge.
up to my waist.
The abutments up there.
Yeah.
Wow,
So,
that's tragic. You know, it's-
And
But
you drive
There's
up
pluses and
along the
minuses to it, right?
but
Like,
even with that, so how you address it, what Northfield did was basically use federal money to buy up the houses that were flooded during Irene on Water Street, upstream from there, and demolish the houses and turn it into public space and regrade it so that it has more room to flow out, so it's less likely to cross the road now. So, right, basically we recontoured the basin it goes through and took the
a
houses
massive
out.
swath of property to mitigate.
Anything to slow
So-
down the
yeah.
berry areas that pool and clearly flood much easier than other areas.
Yeah, the gravel banks along the river up Water Street are just tremendously high.
Living in the Burlington area, we certainly
Yeah.
see the Winooski Dam, right, that flows from Richmond, flows from this, and the flooding there is unbelievable. How it all pools there to Burlington area,
If you dredge in pockets, what you do is you create holes
right?
that obviously reduce the river height, but.
So,
anyways.
We're not gonna
Wait,
solve
wait,
that.
yeah,
We're not gonna solve that problem.
Yeah,
tonight.
that's
right.
fine.
Yeah.
Direct contact with
That's not
everybody.
on
I think
our
we
agenda.
helped solve yours.
I think so. Appreciate it.
Well,
Okay, well,
I
very
look
good.
forward to seeing a new building in the
So
near,
when you,
Yeah.
the near
We'll
future.
probably,
I think,
What's your start date on this? Do you have a set date?
well, I don't know. I mean, we might do it when the dam goes out, but, you know, when you take the bridge out, maybe that's the time to build this, because we're gonna be so damaged anyways.
Makes sense.
Just thinking out loud, you know, on another project in Barry, I couldn't even get the construction permits without going through the hoops of the flood permit, the hazard group, this guy Ned. So I don't know how he's gonna surface again in this whole arena. But I can't even pull an electrical permit without him reviewing stuff, so. They did a good job holding me up at the turning point in Barry at this point, and there's no permit unless he's signing off on everything. So we're going through intense architectural drawings to make them happy. I don't know if they've really gone away. I'm not sure they have. So I'm gonna have to get you architectural drawings, I'm sure, or I won't get any state construction permits. The way I'm seeing it, that's what's happening at Barry.
Barry's a little more strict. Like Burlington.
So,
But there's reasons for that too.
Yeah.
Some might be a little unnecessary, but there are reasons for it, so.
yeah, we'll move it all forward and,
Okay.
we'll get everything in the queue.
Dave, I will be in touch tomorrow
Yeah.
just to
All right.
let you know how we move forward from here and just wrap everything up.
Did you have a copy of this?
Yeah, I think I do, yes.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very enjoyable, and
Have a fun
appreciate
night.
really,
Thank you for
working
the
with
stories
folks.
as well.
Yeah.
It's always nice to know a little more about the town and anything else you guys have to share, so.
Yeah. You know, back about 40 years ago, I was doing a job for Sherman Allen over in Warrensburg, New York. And he wasn't happy with where the river was, the brook was behind the station. So he had the excavator change,
He changed the course of the river.
and it moved his property line back 25 feet.
Yeah, in the old days, right?
You got away with
You
it.
can get away with that today.
No.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a nice
Have a good
evening.
evening.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Sunday morning instruction.
Yeah, I'll never forget
All right,
forget
well.
that.
Okay, I have a couple of really brief updates for you on.
Is this new business or other business?
Nope, this is just my zoning
Update.
report. Here's what's going on in town. Before most of you were on the DRB, we got a proposal a couple of years ago to renovate one of the properties in the Freight Yard Way, and then the flood happened in 2023, and out-of-state property owner who was going to develop this property said, "Oh, contractors are all busy, but I can wait. I'm in no hurry." And then I never heard from them again. And I understand now that they've abandoned that project. I think they're negotiating to sell the property to somebody who's planning to put housing in. So,
Okay.
There is a for sale sign out there, so.
and we also had a note back in October maybe that somebody was working on a site plan to remodel the old engine house, I think it was
Yeah.
called.
Yep.
Yep.
And they were negotiating with the property owners, and I think those negotiations hit a snag and they abandoned their project. So that one's, I think one of the things they found out, they were actually considering putting in a nightclub type venue. And then they found out that the property next door was in discussions to be renovated as housing. And they said, oh, they're probably not going to want a nightclub next door. And then they had some negotiations with the land property owners and said,
No.
maybe not.
Is
So
that the one that's closest to the, track, the long one that those two women were gonna develop into the,
that was the white building, I think. That was 77
Here,
Freight Yard
here's
Way.
the freight house, and then, but this is the engine house.
okay.
Yep.
The brick one down
So
along the tracks.
those projects are no longer moving forward. I also just talked to Tom Davis the other day, and most of you also were before the time of this, but 310 North Main Street, which used to be a video store, has been self-storage for quite some time now. Somebody came and had a project to put in a commercial bakery and was talking about a U-Haul facility a couple of years ago, and got the commercial bakery approved, but the U-Haul facility got denied because of traffic concerns. He wound up not moving forward with anything, and he's actually no longer the owner of that property. Tom tells me that somebody's looking, the new owner of that property is also looking at putting some housing in there. And they have not gotten an application to me. I haven't even heard from them, but Tom has been talking to them, and he was going to get back to them and say, hey, you really need to get in front of the DRB, so let's get this moving. So we may hear something about that.
And figure out their parking.
Pardon?
And figure out their parking.
Yes, they actually have been talking to the owners of Nantana Mill to use some unused. There's a little strip between Nantana Mill and the back of that building that apparently would be ideal for extra parking.
It's actually quite big, but what I suggested to somebody a long time ago is, right where that loading dock is, you take the back of that building, headed north, take that part of that building off. Demolish that end of that building and turn that into the parking lot.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And you still got
And a
huge
good
building.
sturdy guardrail.
And you still got a
They can
huge
put Phil
building.
all the way down to Belknap and make a nice parking area, but anyways, it's just money.
One other thing I'll mention real quickly is that
Ain't mine.
you guys recently approved the application said 11 North Main, but that's the old address. The property, the Citrangelo lot next to Dollar General. I think I understand they ran into a little problem with some utility easements because there are power lines running through part of there. So they're still trying to figure out exactly where we're going to put the building, and I'll have to talk to them about whether they need to come back and review their site plan with us. I don't know if there's been any material changes or not, but they're planning to break ground in the spring, and
That's weird, they wouldn't know that before did their site plan.
so I'll follow up with them and see where that is. So
Okay.
those are the development things that are happening. And something else I'll mention, I just was at a meeting of the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, and they mentioned that this is not mandatory, but they put out a video which is basically an ethics training. It's like a 30 or 45-minute video, and they said your town boards are not required to review this stuff, but they might be interested. So I will plan to send you guys an email with a link to that video if you want to watch it. And Elroy, I'll invite you to come into my office sometime to watch it if you don't have a computer at home. But
I will never have a computer in my house.
okay, well, anyway, so I just want to let you guys know that that's another thing that I will be sharing more information with you
Good for
about.
you.
I don't have a computer and I don't even own a smartphone.
So that's basically it, and I don't have anything else
Ring them up on the landline.
percolating zoning wise. So
Any
those
other
are
business-
that's
any
my
other
news.
Business of the board? Other than how to reach Elroy Hill?
They,
yeah,
Good to know.
we actually, I mentioned that you folks, some of you might have heard about, they just did a community visioning project. They had a session, this is back like January 10th, 11th, a weekend, a couple weeks ago. They did a kickoff meeting on Friday night, and then they did a workshop for 3 hours on Saturday morning. I was at the workshop part.
Yeah.
And they kind of had people sitting around at tables, kind of envisioning how they want to look at opportunities for developing Northfield Falls, Northfield Village, and the corridor in between. And then they put together a little presentation over at the community room last Thursday.
That's your answer.
And then they were going to go back and write up a final report and come back with that. And actually, at that Saturday session, we kind of talked to there's 35, 40 people there. And we talked to folks and said, hey, the planning commission needs a couple of members. The DRB could use a couple of members. And some people were interested. So we got some conversations going. Nobody's come in to actually form you apply yet, but I'm gonna throw something up, hopefully in Front Porch Forum tomorrow to remind folks about that, and maybe that'll generate some more interest, so.
Maybe we could have like
Really would be nice to get our,
five members and an alternate or two.
yes, it would be nice to have 5 members and 1 or 2 alternates, but I'll keep pushing on that.
I'm not gonna be here for him.
Nor am I.
None of us.
I might beat you.
So anyway, that's my news.
And in the freight
Can I
yard
attend this
way,
virtually? Because, I mean, North Carolina is,
No, you have to be a resident of Northfield. No.
Northfield still be my primary residency.
and when they're trying to
Float
redevelop
my boat.
freight yard way, they have to run a whole new water line system out there.
Hmm.
Because
To rail, to.
the water line going out through there actually goes under the Napa store.
Oops.
And it's a 6-inch line. And it's been there for 122 years.
Yeah, so yeah, that's original water. They didn't replace, not that they could have, but they didn't
So-
reroute that when they did the water
So
project.
they want to put,
Boy, that's bad.
so we're going, so the select board is still arguing about whether or not they want to spend the money to put a new line from Wall Street out to that area without having a guaranteed
I don't think
development.
that's a bad idea, right? Like wait for the development and,
We could
because
do-
it's a small stretch.
Yeah.
So it's not,
Well,
it's
What
not,
about, there's not sewer over there, is there?
no,
Because that freight
Yeah.
yard, freight building didn't have a septic,
Septic system over there.
which is crazy.
so,
I never understood that one.
so if you could have
Okay.
them, yeah.
Good stuff to know.
but,
All right,
but it's $100,000.
So when you were working on the crew that put that pipe under the building, what were you thinking?
I just thought it was cute.
No, I remember, a little quick story for you. My dad took over as water department manager one time when the water department manager had a heart attack. My dad still had started his business back in the seventies. The water line that runs across the river down by Tops.
Yeah.
Froze and split.
Yep.
And he had in the wintertime, in February, mind you,
Correct. Back when it was really cold.
it was cold. I got a picture of my dad up in a bucket truck. They strung a temporary water line across the top of the river. They put up 2 poles and strung a water line across the top of the river in February.
Wild. Yep.
I remember when
Plumber in a bucket truck, you never think you'd see that.
Ingenuity.
Right. Usually go down, not up.
Yeah.
no, they set 2 poles on either side of the river and
Yeah.
ran a cable across.
Clovis, right?
Yeah.
Old school Marine, adapt and overcome. That's what he
Yep.
did.
Wow. Anyone want to adjourn, right?
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
I'm thinking of going home myself.
Second,
All right, all those in favor?
I remember when
I never asked anyone to vote. You ever notice that?
the sewer main up on Vine Street was about 6 feet below grade. And 1 year it froze.
there.
Well, that's what, if it were cold